Hello, my name is Doug Brown, Executive Director of the Connecticut Bar Association, and welcome to this episode of BarChat. I have with me today the founder of SuccessTrakESQ, Bill Jawitz. Bill's been working exclusively with lawyers for the last 14 years on how to build better and more effective practices. And today, we're here to talk about web marketing and the things that our members need to know when they're working with their web marketing organization. Welcome, Bill.
Thanks, Doug. Great to be here.
It's great to have you here today. We've talked a lot offline about all the things that are involved in lawyers promoting themselves on the internet and web marketing. Well, maybe we'll just start by talking about what are the ways that lawyers are able to market themselves over the web.
Well, internet marketing or web marketing basically can be thought of all of the channels, the properties, the accounts whereby your name or a link to your firm are found on the internet. Okay. And that most people start off by thinking about their own websites or their firm websites. And certainly that's a key piece, but more and more we're hearing, of course, about social media and the importance of social media and questions around should lawyers be using social media. And so AVO profiles, business Facebook pages, Twitter accounts, all of social media, website, and then lawyer directories, AVO, and other places where lawyers can be found, where people go to look for attorneys and law firms. All of that together interacts, and it's what's called your sort of web visibility or your web presence, a firm's web presence, and that's the world of internet marketing, which is increasingly complex for sure.
Sure, and now it's not just about your blog or your website.
Right.
And I know there are companies that can help you aggregate all that information and tell you what's really going on. And the great thing about internet marketing is it's measurable. But the question is kind of how do you measure it? So what are some ways people are measuring their web marketing?
Well, the primary source of information about who is coming to your website, where they came from, how they found you, how long they're staying on your site, what they're doing once they're there, comes from what's called Google Analytics. Google Analytics is available for all websites, blog pages, and there are versions of Google Analytics which are free, the account is free, for social media specifically. So you can track exactly one's business Facebook activity or the AVO activity after you create a profile and work a profile. So there's Google Analytics, there's social media analytics that are all free, though they can be customized to track the particular activity you're looking to track. The thing I guess I want to say is that it's incredibly complex and becoming increasingly complex. And there's so many folks who find it frustrating because they get Google Analytics reports or they get reports from their web marketing vendor, right, which are Greek. Realistically speaking, they're just
written in web speak.
Sure, they're web speak. There's data that is not provided in context, and it can be extremely challenging. And so the advice, I guess, is if you don't have someone in-house who can take the time and be supported to learn what web marketing metrics are all about, it's really important to at least get educated enough to ask the right questions of your web vendors, because web marketing is not cheap at all. There are plenty of folks that pay a couple of $1,000 a month to tens of thousands a month.
So the web vendors are generating pretty reports, but they may not tell you anything. You might see graphs. What should they be looking for in those reports?
Well, it's a great question. And so if one were to Google the most important, a phrase like, most important metrics in Google Analytics for a law firm, you will find many articles, because there's people around the world who are writing about this. And so I do recommend viewers look up most important Google metrics for law firms.
Okay.
That's one tip.
Use Google to figure out how to use Google.
Absolutely, to learn. And so, for example, many reports of web vendors will say, total visitors. But you also want to look for unique visitors and repeat visitors for a variety of reasons. Because once you've gone there, or you've got 100 people who have already gone there and go there again, that may give you no information as to whether they're an interested party to hire you for the first time.
Could be the same person visiting 100 times.
Oftentimes. In fact, it's quite common for most traffic, until you dig down, for most traffic to be repeat traffic, because people have already bookmarked you. And that's not necessarily bad in and of itself,
right.
But I guess the point is that there's a handful of things you really need to learn about. And then, were you going to ask a question on that? It's so complex.
Well, I wanted to get a sense of, so if our viewers are watching this and saying, wow, it's complicated, it takes a lot to learn, I'm paying a lot of money, I want to pick up the phone and call my web person or my marketing person and make sure I'm getting something, I'm getting what I should be getting. How do they have that conversation?
Yeah, here's the thing to focus on, which is whether the reports are monthly or quarterly. Many web vendors, web and firms that focus on law firms exclusively, will make data available through their portal at any time. You could check it literally every day. Many provide a monthly Google Analytics report. Some provide quarterly. Merely looking at data in a static point in time doesn't really tell you anything. So what you want to ask the web vendors is, what did you actually do last month? What specific actions did you take? Because they'll say, we review meta tags, we review backlinks, and that's great, but reviewing backlinks, does that include creating a high quality backlink back to your site which Google values highly and helps your visibility? And if so, what was that backlink? From where had they established a link to your firm? How many did they do? How many meta tags were updated based on new content that you've provided? So you want to ask for what actions concretely, measurably were taken, and what is your explanation for why what you did in the previous quarter results in what we are seeing in terms of changed data. And that's the missing piece often. You'll be provided data, but not compared month over month, and with no narrative that says, here's why your unique views or your time on page went up or down. Usually you just find out it went up or down. Doesn't tell you why, and it certainly doesn't tell you what they've done that could have led to the improved performance or the changed performance. So the key thing for accountability is, what did you do in the last reporting period? And how did it lead to what we're looking at? Explain the correlation.
Terrific.
It's a matter of the squeaky wheel getting the grease.
So it occurs to me as we're talking that the web marketing people speak a different language, like they accuse lawyers of speaking different language. Backlinks and meta tags. And how would our members get educated in just the most basic, so that when they're hearing these technical terms, they don't feel like, they don't know what they're hearing?
I go back to Google. So how to understand basic web marketing terms. I would search that. I mean, ideally, you have someone on staff who is invested, or there are, I have many clients that have social media virtual assistants.
I see.
Or off, not on site, but people who they pay a certain amount of money to each month to aggregate and to aggregate the data from all the social media sites, from their website, from their blogs, etc., and interpret that, and then work with or serve as an intermediary to work with the web vendors themselves. It's virtually impossible, except for the geekiest of attorneys, to understand, much less have the time, because that's not direct revenue generating time. I mean, it leads to revenue generation when done well. But my advice is, if you don't have an internal person who can devote some time to become educated, to hire someone who is a social media analytics pro. And there are people all around the country. I have a few people that I refer clients to. And connect with them so that they understand specifically what you're trying to market for. If you're a general practice firm, is there an emphasis of one practice area over another? If you're a boutique firm, new audiences within that niche. So that they understand the business objectives and can translate those into statements and dialogue with the web vendor to say, here's why we want to focus on particular key phrases as opposed to others.
So it's almost as if, as a lawyer, you want to have a representative who's beholden to you to hold the marketing company accountable.
It's an excellent point, and I've heard from several clients, we wish we could trust that when our web vendor recommends we buy another page or a directory listing within their existing universe, that they are recommending that because it will actually help us, or they're recommending it because it's increased revenue stream. So it's sort of, with financial services, the equivalent of fee for service, where they're not pushing a particular
and they're
agenda
beholden to you as the lawyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It occurs to me that if lawyers are, what you're talking about is essential to really be found, and even if lawyers aren't doing marketing to be found online, clients are checking them out online, and you need to know what's going on. If you're going to invest $2,000, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, $20,000 a month in your advertising, it probably makes sense to have somebody on your side to make sure that investment's paying off.
And to be tracking what are called conversion rates.
Conversion
rates.
This
is another very important thing where I've seen folks paying $7,000, $8,000 a month and not being provided data that speaks to what's called engagement. So once you're found, it's great. But the content that is read and the effectiveness that the page that someone lands on determines whether or not they're going to spend more time on the page or download a guide or click on a contact now form or sign up for a webinar.
Right.
And you've got to study, not only being found, but once you're found, how are you converting readers into interested leads and prospects and actual opportunities.
So for our members, it sounds a lot like a specialty area, just like you'd have a specialty area of the law. There are people now that do this, that many of our members this didn't exist maybe 5 or 10 years ago. If somebody wanted to, kind of as we look to wrap up, what should they look for in a person to kind of be their eyes and ears with their web marketing company?
I call them a social media assistant. If you were to Google social media assistant or social media virtual assistant, social media consultant, to make sure that they have experience with at least professional service firms and ideally lawyers. And again, I know a few.
Sure.
But with that, because all of these ideas work in some ways similarly, because the web is the web. But if you're a retailer, you're selling an actual physical product through an online
store, totally different. Yeah,
it's extremely different. So just because somebody has managed a social media or a paid search campaign for businesses roughly at your aggregate, revenue, doesn't mean they know anything about law firms, much less the ethics components, the advertising components, and what's involved there. So you need social media folks who have some experience with law firms, is what I would say. Ideally, it's a challenge to find them, but
well, just like when you're advising a client about finding a lawyer, look for somebody who's been there and done that before.
Yes.
Very, very helpful. It is possible to achieve. You've seen lawyers figure this out and be very productive.
Absolutely.
So there is hope.
The thing is, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I've seen that over and over and over again. You can find people who will do an audit of the report you get for a one-time fee and say, here's what's missing from this report. Go back and ask your web vendor these questions. This is what you want in the report.
That's probably a great first step for us to wind up with.
Yeah, the SEO person that I use does that for clients.
Terrific.
Yeah, great.
Well, till next time. Thanks
Great.
a lot.
You bet.